Hello, everybody, and welcome to a deadline stream, but it's not on a Friday. It's on a Tuesday evening. We are getting ready for the very strange Game Week 15 fixtures. It's that festive fixture time of the year, and it is very, very condensed. In fact, Ben, I'm sure you're very excited to see the festive motif that I used to promote the show. Did you like that, and how are you doing today?
It's absolutely exquisite, Jason. Loved it. Getting me in the air, giving me some Christmas vibes, getting us in the Christmas spirit. I've ditched the humbug. I'm all ready for Christmas now. And apart from being extremely harassed and rushed and trying to squeeze everything in, it's all good. But I'm looking forward to the deadline.
And you might be interrupted today, though, because obviously we are super, super busy at the moment, and you are waiting for a phone call, aren't you?
I've got a very important phone call coming, and I may need to verify or provide some ID. So, yes, that should only take us 10, 15 seconds, and then I can let my partner deal with the rest of the conversation. So that is imminent. In fact, it's actually overdue, which is why it's running to this live stream. But look, the show must go on. We can't wait for everybody. There's other things more important than...
Exactly. FPL is more important. So just as always, before we go into the show, to remind everybody, we're going to go through the teams alphabetically, starting off with Bournemouth and then ending with Wolves. And if you don't have your questions answered today, it's obviously a super, super quick turnaround. So probably unlikely to answer your questions, but you can always tweet me or Ben. However, also there is the fail-safe of going onto the Premier Injuries website, and you can check out the latest information on there. But we're going to start off with Bournemouth, like I said. The Cherries, what is the latest over there?
Yeah, look, I'll kick off with a caveat, as we always do. This is not so much a working document today as we would be in the build-up to maybe a deadline on Saturday, but because of the quick turnaround, the expectation is that managers will be looking to look after their players, manage their loads. So the case is going to be in question whether the managers heavily rotate midweek or they do that at this weekend, and I do expect lots of changes. So that's going to be the difficulty in and around that. So make sure that you do have a fairly deep bench, because there are always going to be one or two surprises chucked in there. And of course, those minor knocks and niggles from the weekend can easily spill over to a 2 and 3 day injury, which may rule them out or, cause managers to err on the side of caution with regards to that. So kicking off straight away, the Cherries, very unlucky not to get their third win on the bounce at the weekend. A goal in time added on from Ollie Watkins at the weekend. So that poses a little bit of a question as to whether Areola, what does he do? Stick with the more or less the same 11, or does he look to tweak in terms of injuries? We'll start with that. It's pretty much the season as you were. We're expecting the same squad to be available, although there are one or two players within that squad who are carrying a little bit of illness. So decisions on their availability will be made closer to kickoff, but it doesn't look to be anything too serious. Like I say, the only changes may come in if Areola wants to freshen his team. You have the likes of Philip Billing on the bench, who's missed out for the last couple, through the Newcastle games through injury, and then they've struggled to get back into that starting 11.
Yes, indeed. So let's move over to Arsenal. There's a bit of interest there with, again, the squad rotations. Are they going to play? Aren't they going to play? One of those is Gabriel Jesus. You're thinking he won't play. And also Tomiyasu as well. Are these fitness reasons, rotation reasons? Do you think that Arteta's just wanting to keep the squad fresh?
Yeah, I think the Ben White looks to be a bit of a no-brainer. Tomiyasu was more of a precautionary withdrawal. We know he's had ongoing issues with his calf for quite some time now. Done really, really well deputising for Ben White at right back, but came off. And like I say, no need to take too many risks when Ben White is fully fit and available. Of course, he has been managing his own ongoing niggly problems in recent times. So that, like I say, that seems to be the obvious choice. Maybe the Gabriel Jesus up front is a bit of a contentious one. And I'm basing that purely on the fact that, Gabriel Jesus is coming off the back of that hamstring injury. It'll be more of a case of managing his load. And again, you've got Eddie and Ketia who can come in there and start the game, and it's a like-for-like swap. So it's more of an opinion based, like I say, on recent injury history. And Kai Havertz for Trossard on the left-hand side of midfield, as we've seen the two flip-flopping between Champions League and Premier League in recent game weeks.
Yes, and you know it does have some good effects on the team as well. Havertz is deployed, I guess, would actually work in this type of game, which I imagine will be a bit more physical, whereas Trossard is kind of there to be able to dribble, pass and break down defences. Not that Havertz can't do that, but he's got that aerial threat as well, which I think will be important against Luton. And just before we go on, a lot of people are kind of seeing this as, you know, a really easy tie. Oh, sorry. A very easy tie. But Luton are quite difficult at home, aren't they?
Look, I think I like Rob Edwards. I think he speaks really, really well. Of course, I had one or two injuries. I lost two centre-backs at the weekend. Neither of those players has been ruled out. We'll touch upon that. And maybe that did contribute to the fact that they lost at Brentford. But performance-wise, yeah, they're doing really, really well. In terms of their home form, Kenilworth Road, they've never lost a game by more than one goal, and that includes they got a draw against Liverpool, which was a last gasp equaliser from the Reds. So look, this is by no means, by any stretch of the imagination, a cakewalk for Arsenal. So I'm expecting a good game, and you know what? If Arsenal could come away with 3 points, I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be very happy with that.
So we move from the Gunners on to Aston Villa. And, you know, a lot of people are saying that the Luton game is a very easy game for Arsenal. But Aston Villa maybe have the toughest game of the weekend. Or do they, Ben? Because obviously there's a lot of news kind of going into this game about who will be playing and not playing for Manchester City. What is the latest with that?
Yeah, we'll touch upon the City news, and it's obviously big. But Villa first up again. We're looking at pretty much more or less the same squad as we had at the weekend, although Unai Emery will not make any decisions with regards to his starting 11 until Wednesday morning. He said there is a few players with some pain and a few who are a little bit fatigued and tired. Nothing more than you would expect at this stage of the season, having played on Sunday. But I think there could be one or two changes in this team. I do see Matty Cash returning to that starting 11. He dropped out of the team at the weekend. And also Diaby, who comes back in. Kamara, he sat out of game week 14 due to suspension. That was a one-match ban, but he's okay. And also Luca Digne making way for Alex Moreno again. Just a little bit of a freshen up into that team, a like for like. So Moreno's done well when he has been involved, and I think he deserves his start. And it's a big game. You know what? I think, is it Villa winning 13 on the bounce at home? You know what you can get? I had a quick look when I was doing some research on this. I think they're a massive, they're not far off 2.5, maybe 3 to 1 Aston Villa, which is massive value. And if you're if that floats your boat, then I would look to be sort of edging towards Villa.
Yes, indeed. That's kind of the discussion point that I wanted there. Looking at Aston Villa, especially at home, they've been ever so consistent. I don't know if you need to move off there, Ben. Are you being called for this special ID?
I don't know. Yes, I'll let you talk, and I will stay here and
yes. You might need to mute the mic though, in case of your ID. Otherwise, people might steal your identity. So yes, everybody. At the moment, Mr. Big Ben has to go off very quickly and do an important call. Not sure what the reasons are for the call, but yeah. Everybody in the comments as well, let us know what you're thinking in terms of maybe Aston Villa versus Manchester City, because Ollie Watkins goes into this. He's both creator and striker. He's playing so incredibly well. But then Haaland, a lot of people are saying it's quite a season for him, and yet he is playing consistently good as well. I'm backing probably Aston Villa to cause a bit of an upset here. We've also got Buffy saying, "G'day gents, 4 a.m. down under Dinnery and Sar News, please, so I can go back to bed." Unfortunately, Buffy, we go through everything, alphabetically, just so that if people are listening after we broadcast, then it's easy for them to follow. So maybe go back to bed and tune in a little bit later. You know, we will be going until about 6 our time over here in England. So maybe set the alarm for about half an hour so that you can tune in right at the end where you have those Wolves information.
It's cruel, Jason. It's cruel. Look, Dinnery is out. Pape Sarr has had nothing. He's going to be touch and go for Thursday. A press conference will be tomorrow from Boston past the FPL deadline.
Oh no, I think it's goalkeeper Sarr from Wolves.
Oh, Sarr. I thought, right, fine. Trained yesterday. So no, unless there's been a reaction, he'll be absolutely fine.
Okay, there you go. So that's actually a break there, but you know we've done that there especially for you, Buffy. So we'll move from Aston Villa there. I hope people enjoyed my wittering on there about basically agreeing with you, Ben, that I think Aston Villa are going to cause some upsets at the weekend. Brentford though, they are going with their kind of classic 5 at the back here. Ben, explain the reasonings for it. Maybe some people don't know, but you do this when they have a game against a bigger side.
Yeah, or certainly away from home. So typically you would see the Bees line up in a 4-3-3 at home, but when they're going away on the road, they will play with a 5-3-2 in defence or a 3-5-2 in attack. But also as well, Thomas Frank will looking to freshen his team up. So there's a few players who've been on the fringes of that starting 11. That just allows Thomas Frank to bring those back into the force. So we'll have a look, and I've made a bit of a judgment call here. I think Neil Maupay has been a little bit unfortunate in recent weeks, has been getting himself a couple of goals and looks to be recapturing some of the form that seemed to have dissipated when he joined Everton. So I've got Maupay in ahead of Yohan Wissa alongside Brian Mbeumo. Again, my opinion on that, I do think he deserves a start. Unfortunate on Wissa, but look, that's again, we're just talking about freshening things up with the quick turnaround. On the left-hand side, I've got Roerslev back in. We do see him in that wing-back role, especially on the left-hand side with Aaron Hickey being injured. And also Matthias Zanka-Jorgensen is part of that back line, that 3 players. And that's mainly because Nathan Collins is still injured. On the right-hand side, Koros, he was a late addition to the starting 11 after Christoph Ayer pulled up with a foot problem while warming up at the weekend. Now, that wasn't anything new. He actually went into the game as a slight doubt, and it looks as if that injury is going to keep him out for some weeks. So, again, one to watch. Hopefully, we're not going to see many further changes to the starting 11 other than this.
So continuing over, obviously Brentford are playing Brighton this weekend, and so we're going to get onto their news next. We've already got a few questions on João Pedro, so I think he's probably the one that most people want to know about. But talk us through the rest of the 11 for the Seagulls.
Yeah, I mean, the João Pedro was flagged as a slight doubt at the weekend following their involvement in the Europa League, and that's why he started on the bench. So I do have him back in that start 11, probably at the expense of Adam Lallana. Now, there are a few changes that Roberto De Zerbi will be making here. Of course, he have an ever-growing injury list, so he wants to make sure that the players that he does have now, he wants to try and protect those. That's why we've seen the likes of Pascal Gross as well on the bench at the weekend, and also Karim Mitoma. He's been managing a little bit of a problem that kept him out of the recent internationals. Both of those players are thrown back in. I'm also throwing a start in there for James Milner. Now, we've seen Henselwood start on the left and Milner coming on the left-hand side. But I just say maybe if you put Milner on the right, that allows you to push Pascal Gross a little bit up. Without the likes of Lewis Dunk and Adam Webster, that's why we're deploying Veltman in there. However, if Roberto De Zerbi wants to go a slightly different way, Igor Julio could drop into it as a back 3, and that Hinselwood would be on the left with Gross as the other sort of wing back. So there is a little bit flexibility in how that's set up. So by no means locked into this setup with this starting 11.
We did have, a couple of questions here on Adringa. Marius says, is a benching incoming? And then Martin says he is due a rest. And Marius has followed that up saying he's played a lot recently. What do you think on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. There's no denying It just comes down to, the trust that Roberto De Zerbi has in the rest of his squad. And also, like I say, like I mentioned at the head of this program, whether it's going to be benching this game or certainly going into game week 16. Is it that right? Yeah, game week 16. So I don't think you'll be starting both matches. So it's a case of, you're flipping the coin with that. And I've already made quite a few changes to this start 11 from last weekend. So I'm keeping a drinker in. And like I say, hopefully, Roberto, he gets through that, and Roberto De Zerbi sort of manages his squad and cuts his cloth accordingly for the next game.
And Arnault has question marks over Ferguson as well. Obviously, he's had that injury recently. Could he be treated with, as you'd say, kid gloves?
Look, it is possibility. We know that Danny Welbeck is out injured, so it's going to be Evan Ferguson who's going to tend to lead that Seagulls attack. But he has picked up knocks. He was carrying a bit of a lower back issue. He had a bit of a knee problem early in the season, and there's also been a little bit of a hamstring niggle in there as well. So yeah, look, you're right to have concerns with regards to him being in the starting 11. And João Pedro could indeed lead that Brighton front line with maybe Adam Lallana sitting in behind, or bringing somebody like maybe Buonanotte in to that team as well. So again, a little bit of flexibility. It is difficult because Brighton historically, certainly over the last couple of seasons, has been one of those teams that we've seen lots and lots of changes.
So moving on to the Clarets, and obviously they'll be absolutely buzzing after their 5-0 win. But is the injury news all positive as well?
Vincent Kompany keeping these cards very, very close to his chest. Doesn't like to give too much away. What we do know is going to be at least one enforced change, and that's Jordan Bayer, who picked up his 5th caution of the campaign at the weekend against Sheffield United. So unfortunately, he's out. That opens up a space in that Burnley backline. I've got Del Crow in there, but Dakhil is a possibility, although he has been out of favour in recent times elsewhere. I just think when you're coming off the back of a big result like that, then Vincent Kompany, they'll not be feeling any fatigue or tiredness. They'll be chomping at the bit to get back out there and try to get another, back that up with another great result. So just the one change, and I've went with Del Crow, the left-hand side of O'Shea, central pairing.
I think that's actually a interesting talking point to maybe jump onto. Teams like Burnley, I guess teams lower down the league table who don't have European football involvement, are they less likely to rotate? Would you be more inclined to maybe move towards those sort of players, even just for a few game weeks, especially to pad out your squad, just so that you know that they're definitely playing? Maybe a star from a slightly lower team who might not pick up as many points, but he's definitely going to start. As you say, availability is the best ability.
Yes and no. I think what you do have, like I say, with the Burnley, you also have a squad that maybe, has probably got 16, 17, 18 players who all of a similar ilk. I think Roberts at right back was the man that was getting a nod over Coutinho. You've got Gudmundsson for Brun Larsen. There's not much in there. When Jack Cork is back, when you've got Josh Cullenbank, they could come into midfield. So it doesn't necessarily lock in a start 11, although Vincent Kompany has been, made minimal changes. I think just one change in the last maybe 4, possibly even 5 games. And like I say, if it hadn't been for that suspension, I would have expected the Clarets to be unchanged again. So, look, if you're not playing European football and you're not involved in any other domestic competition, and it literally is a game every 5, 6 or 7 days, then yeah, in theory, look, there are no issues with regards to load management. Players it's more than enough time to recover fully and then to be able to perform optimally, ready ahead of that next match.
So continuing over to Chelsea, and it's hard to know which Chelsea's going to turn up each week. They got a fairly good going out there with Brighton at the weekend. But what is the latest for the team? Is anybody coming back in it? And I guess a lot of people once again are asking, Nkunku, is he coming back soon? Do I put him in my team? It's probably a little bit premature for that, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, so the official word is within Kunku and also Romeo Lavia, they're at the conditioning or reconditioning phase of their recovery, which means that, they're in that final phase. They're training, they mayn't be taking in every single thing, but it's a case of building up that fitness. Of course, Nkunku hasn't even featured in the Premier League since he's arrived. I think he's probably spent best part of almost 4 months on the sidelines. So there's a base level of fitness there that needs to be built up. So we've seen him on the training pitches. He is very close. Would I expect a return to the match day squad before Christmas? Absolutely. I think he's on the cusp of that. But for this midweek game, that's going to come too soon. Now, we do know that Chelsea will be forced into at least one change. That's Conor Gallagher. He picked up 2 yellow cards at the weekend. I don't expect Mauricio Pochettino to change his setup too much. It looks like it should be an easy like-for-like swap with Cole Palmer coming straight back into the team. He dropped to the bench. We keep Mudryk on the left-hand side with Sterling swapping places. But then also returning to the starting 11, we have Reece James, the skipper, of course. He was another player who sat out of the last game after his dismissal against Newcastle. Marc Cucurella also back in contention, but I don't see him ousting Levi Colwill for that left back spot.
So Marius has said, I want to know who is the most nailed defender from Chelsea. James is injury prone.
I mean, you don't see Thiago Silva miss many matches in terms of minutes in the Premier League. And prior to his shoulder injury, I think Levi Colwill is a player who can go centrally or out on the left-hand side, particularly when Ben Chilwell was out. Then I do see him as pretty much being locked in. So it's going to be interesting because the difficulty is when you've got people like the Sarzi who can come in as well, and Cucurella. You can slightly tweak that formation. Then really, I mean, Thiago Silva's what is he now? I think he's about 57. Can he play, and starting back-to-back games all the time? Maybe not. So, I wouldn't put my house on any of that Chelsea team, backline starting week in and week out. Reece James, if fit, I think he starts. Whether he plays, more than 60 or 70 minutes for now, again, remains questionable. Is there and if Pochettino doesn't need to risk him beyond those minutes, then if you're the type of FPL manager that likes all of his players to see out that full 90 minutes, then maybe Reece James isn't the player for you.
Is it true that you actually used to play alongside Thiago Silva?
I think he's a couple of months older than me.
Martin Keenan has said Roberto Sanchez, it's too bad to want any Chelsea defender except James ever, but as you've kind of said, Ben, and I think it was Maris as well, he's too injury prone. I just wouldn't trust him at the moment, but also the inconsistency at Chelsea as well, like we kind of started off the segment with. That you don't know which Chelsea's going to turn up. Is it going to be the Chelsea that beats Brighton 3-2, or is it going to be a Chelsea that plays all right against Brentford but still loses to Naught? We do have questions about Anderson this week or benching Chimikas. We will get onto that with Liverpool, and also questions about Klopp going to rest Salah against Sheffield United. Again, we will get to that when we discuss Liverpool. Actually, to be fair, we are moving on to Crystal Palace right now. So, Ben, would you play Joachim Anderson against Bournemouth this week? Or would you rather play Chimikas and then obviously get onto the Crystal Palace news?
I mean, the Tsimikas comes under pressure from Joe Gomez. So it's whether you believe Tsimikas is going to get the nod from Jurgen Klopp. And that I'm not 100% certain. I think I did go with Tsimikas in the predicted lineup, but maybe again that comes down to Jurgen Klopp more of a freshening his team and just giving Joe Gomez a little bit of an opportunity to stretch his legs and keeping his that base level of fitness and match sharpness up. So I'm more inclined to go with Joachim Anderson if it was between the two, just purely from the fact that I'm pretty certain, barring any last minute problems, he's going to start. And you would give Crystal Palace, a real chance, despite the form of Bournemouth of getting a kind of result. It's one of the ones that they would look at on that fixture list and say, yeah, these are the games that we're going to target for 3 points to keep us away from that drop zone.
And as well, Bournemouth are not very good at defending set pieces, so Anderson has obviously a good opportunity, especially with Elise back in the team to maybe get his head onto one of those well-delivered opportunities there. Everton are up next. You've still got Calvert-Lewin starting. In fact, he was rested last week, wasn't he? And you kind of predicted that? Or have I got that wrong? But yeah, what is the news for the Toffees in another game where they'll be hoping to fight and have a good output?
Yeah, unfortunately for the Toffees, it's going to be another heavy defeat for them on Thursday night. Can't see anything other than an away win. And there's absolutely no bias in that whatsoever.
Are you sure? Are you
sure?
No,
I mean, no, I'm stick purely to the facts. I'm not letting any, I'm not letting any of me, my own feelings influence the judgment of that game. But you are correct, Jason, in the fact that I did have Beto starting in that game at the weekend. We know that Calvert-Lewin's been managing a little bit of a niggly calf problem. He has trained, but kudos to Sean Dyche and his backroom staff that managed the striker really well. He's come through training sessions, so I do expect Calvert-Lewin to return to that start 11. And of course, those extra recovery days will certainly help the Toffees. It may be more of a concern maybe as we look ahead to Sunday's game. Elsewhere within that team, because we've had those sort of 4 days recovery, I don't expect much change at all. Idrissa Gana, he will keep his place ahead of Amadou Onana. That calf problem will probably keep him out, and if it doesn't, I wouldn't expect anything more than an opportunity maybe from the bench. Like I say, probably more realistic Sunday for him.
There you go. So positive news, I guess, there for the Magpies. But continuing over to a different team that play in black and white, it is Fulham. And they had an actually good performance against Liverpool. I thought they would be comfortably thrashed. Didn't see them scoring 3. They seemed to be allergic to goals before that game there. But is that going to continue? And is there any injury news to boost the team?
The squad is pretty much exactly the same as it was at the weekend. We've seen 3 changes, I think it was, from Marco Silva. So again, we look to mix it up and freshen things up again. Willian dropped to the bench, which was a little bit of a surprise, but that's probably more of a reflection of his age and years other than a reflection on recent performance. So Willian comes back into the team. At right back, it looks as if it's going to be between Kenny Tete and Timothy Castagna. Again, Tetty's coming off the back of a fairly long-term injury. And I'm just thinking here with Castagna is that, Tetty may just need a little bit additional recovery time. Wilson on the right-hand side, a little bit higher up the pitch. But that could easily be somebody like Dikova Reid or even Alex Iwobi. I've dropped Alex Iwobi in a little bit deeper, but we have players like Harrison Reed and also Sasa Lukic who could come in there as well. So again, there are 1 or 2 positions which potentially Marco Silva could look to freshen things up. I've also dropped Raul Jimenez from the start 11 and thrown back in Carlos Vinicius.
There you go. So continuing over from Fulham into Liverpool, their opponents of last weekend. A lot of attention here. Again, you did the Athletic just before coming on here. So many questions about Gakpo, Nunes, who's going to play, who's not going to play. And I'm sure people will be worried about that for game week 15. But you've got both. When people said who plays, you say yes. Kind of talk us through maybe you're thinking that. Is that something that you are going to change and update? As we said, this is a live working document. I mean, how certain are you on that?
I certainly think Gakpo starts. Whether he's deployed as a central striker like that or even potentially on that left-hand side role of midfield remains to be seen. But I think he does get the nod from Jurgen Klopp. I will always 100% stick Mo Salah into that front 3. I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that he's going to be managed, and we haven't seen it a great deal from Jurgen Klopp in all of the time he's been there. He's a supreme athlete. and he's the type of player that will want to be out there for every single game. Of course, the injury to Diogo Jota helps ease the decisions in those attacking areas. So he's out of the equation. So it looks to be maybe a straight shootout between Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz. I've went for Núñez, obviously, corners, and I'll probably leave it in there. But again, I think it is a bit of a 50-50 call. Núñez is in the better form, but when I was just looking at it, doing a little bit of research, it has failed to add to his Premier League tally since the back end of October. And he's massively underperforming his XG and his goal involvement. So he is due a one. I know he has been a different beast, a different animal in the Champions League. So he's definitely due one. And what an opportunity it would be to, like I say, get him back on the Premier League's goal trail. So that's why I've went for Núñez.
Yes, that I agree with you as well. He's getting in the right positions, mammoth amount of shots in the box. It's just, I guess, a little lack of luck, and maybe sometimes a little lack of quality as well. You kind of see that he can be a world beater in certain games, and I don't know what it is at the moment, but he's just not putting those opportunities away. And if he does well, I think Salah will do well as well, because the XA for Salah is quite good. He's providing a lot of key passes. He's both an architect and a goal scorer this season, which is great to see for FPL. Continuing over to Luton, we mentioned them at the start. They're playing Arsenal, but they're going to make it a very difficult game for them. You've got 5 at the back there. Have they got a full-strength squad to take on the Gunners?
That remains to be seen. The two major doubts heading into this one was Tom Lockyer and also Tendon Mengi. Now, Mengi was a knee problem. Rob Edwards flagged that as the inside of his knee. So that medial ligament, it looked as if it was more of a precautionary measure, and there were promising signs in training on Monday with that. So that's why we have Mengi back in there. Tom Lockyer, not so good. Picked up a knock during the first half of that game against Brentford, lower back, started to seize up and really struggled with it, replaced at half-time and wasn't able to work with the group at all on Monday. Now, Rob Edwards said, such as his experience and his influence on the team, we're going to give him every chance to try and prove himself. So that decision will probably hasn't been made until today. But for me, if you're not training 24 hours before, then I've got to sort of play the percentages, and that's why I have Lockyer out. But on the positive side, Doherty has recovered from a hip problem that kept out game week 14, and he comes back in there. The one position that maybe I have questions about, again, Amari Bell on the left-hand side, just recently returned from a long-term hamstring injury, again, starting quick games in succession. That might be a little bit risky, but I have kept him in there just because of the injuries that they've got elsewhere within that Luton backline. And of course, I've threw the veteran Andros Townsend, bringing him back into that starting 11 too.
So we've got a question here. In fact, we've got 2 now because Freshie has added 1 as well. So Will Hope has said bench 1 of Palmer, Gordon or Darwin for this game week. I'll allow it because it's 2 teams that we have covered. And obviously we'll get on to Gordon in a little bit because there's worries about him too.
I would bench, do you know what? I would bench Darwin of those. One, we can't be 100% certain he starts, but secondly, they travel to Bramall Lane. Chris Weiler takes over. I'm not going to necessarily say there's going to be a new manager bounce, but sort of Bramall Lane will be buzzing. The crowd's going to be up for it. They're going to be lifted. I think it'll be a tight game, so I don't think Liverpool are going to go there and blow the blades away. So for that reason, if it is tight, maybe a 1-0, then the chances maybe of him getting an opportunity to score may be limited. Gordon going against his own club for Everton, he's one I do fancy. And can't remember the other player that you said, but
Palmer,
yeah, he comes back in. He's been in decent form this week. Are we talking 8-9 goal involvement so far on penalties? Yeah, look, those 2 players for me are guaranteed starts. Núñez is a marginal call, so he would be the player that would make way for me.
You've broken my heart there, Ben. I was hoping you'd say Palmer because I've got Núñez in my team. So I guess that kind of answers it for Will Hope. because I've got Gordon and Darwin in my team, but I don't have Palmer. Freshie says Alvarez or Palmer to start in my FPL.
Oh, that's a tough one because I've got Alvarez as well. Hold on. I'm trying to even look. Do you know what? I am expecting a really tough game at Villa Park. But those are the types of games where Manchester City, if they turn up and perform, they could blow Villa away. Let's make no bones about that. Cole Palmer. I think the penalties just edge it, and given what's going on at Old Trafford with Eric Ten Hag, unless Eric Ten Hag makes wholesale changes to that start 11, Chelsea could go there and absolutely batter them, because the way they performed at the weekend at St James's Park, the way they have been performing, I'm not subscribing to all of this crap that he's coming out today saying, of course, there's unity in the dressing room. They're all playing for each other and they're working hard because, of the performances that they're showing. They didn't look like they were prepared to go that extra yard for the manager against Newcastle. It was a 1-0 scoreline on paper, which, if you didn't see the game, you may have thought was a quite tightly fought contest, but it wasn't. No. They absolutely got dominated, outworked, outran. There was an opportunity there for Manchester United to lay down a marker against a team who is to the bone in their squad, hadn't made 3 changes in any way, shape or form to their starting lineup, and also no substitute appearances in Paris, and they didn't take that opportunity and they paid the price.
This isn't a popular answer, obviously the other one, I think from Marius. He says, I'm disappointed in you, Ben. And Martin says, I'd rather have 25 minutes of Darwin versus a tired Sheffield United than 90 minutes of Palmer. But this is why you're asked the questions. If you ask why ask the question if you don't like the answer?
Look, it's opinion as well. And look, I just think penalties edge it for me with Palmer, and he's going to get the minutes. Whereas, with Darwin, it's certainly not locked in, because easy Luis Diaz could start.
Okay, so we'll have one more of these and or questions. Armani Exchange says Alvarez or Nunes, and just to say to Armani Exchange, I love your clothes that you make. Absolutely wonderful. But yes, Alvarez or Nunes, Ben?
Alvarez.
There you go. So, talking of Alvarez, we are on the Man City 11 at the moment. You've got him starting. A lot of people questioning, will he start? But it's a big blow for the team that they don't have Rodri once again. And so, obviously, it's a makeshift midfield there, DM. In terms of it, they've lost a lot of creativity there. We saw Haaland really struggle in those games where he wasn't in the side. And so this, again, is why I think that Aston Villa have more than a chance against the Citizens. But yeah, talk us through the team selection and the effect this is going to have on the team.
Yeah, we've also lost Jack Grealish and question marks over the fitness of Jeremy Doku. So potentially 3 players omitted from that Manchester City squad. As always, Pep, you have one more training session, we'll make a decision. So that's pretty much where we were after the press conference. What we do know, John Stones, he's now fully fit and ready to start. Didn't get a look in at Tottenham, but given that as you mentioned, Rodri is suspended, thrown him back into the midfield. And again, he was fantastic when he played in that hybrid role, particularly towards the back end of last season. So he was fantastic. He would sit alongside Kovacic, is hopefully okay. Slight tweak in the formation to a 4-2-3-1. We've seen him go with a 3-2-4-1. Hopefully Pep will see this more of a solid, more robust lineup, and defensively Manchester City need to be on a lot firmer foot and a lot sounder. Conceded 4 against Chelsea, 3 against Tottenham, so it's very un-Pep like, un-Manchester City like. So that's why I'm going with a back 4.
And just because we've had a flurry of people joining, rewind back to the start, so we start off alphabetically and just go through the teams. Also hit that subscribe button, because a lot of you people enjoying viewing are not subscribed, and it helps us out create better content for you. But we're going to move from Manchester City to Manchester United. And as you said there, in your opinion, it's going to be another tough game week for them. There's so many issues at Manchester United, very poorly run club. It seems like Erik ten Hag is under immense pressure, could be out the door soon. But for this game week 15, what is the team news?
I am taking a little bit of a punt with this Manchester United lineup. It's how much Erik ten Hag will be influenced. One, by the performance at St James's Park, or lack of a performance, for better words, and also that fatigue factor. Now, Kobbie Manu is a player who I may look to bring out. And again, it's not a reflection, but it's more the fact that he's an 18-year-old. He's been thrown in at the very deep end, and it could be a case of just managing that youngster's merit. So Amrabat would be the player who could come in and sit alongside McTominay. You'll also notice that Luke Shaw is omitted from this start 11. I've almost flagged before the game at St James's Park that Luke Shaw has spent, I think it was the best part of 3+ months on the sidelines with a hamstring issue, and he started his third game in 6 days. What you don't want is a fourth start and then, that fatigue being a factor and him picking up an injury. Like I say, you have Wan-Bissaka back now, and Diego Dalot can easily switch flanks to the left-hand side. So that's why we went with that. And also, I think the Lindelof and Maguire partnership, again, it's not great, but it does a job. Elsewhere within the team, Marcus Rashford's performance has been well documented. It's a 50-50 call. I am not a big fan of Anthony, by the way, not by any stretch of the imagination, but that's how much I think of Marcus Rashford at this moment in time. How the mighty have fallen, how the mighty have went from my locked-in captain from week in, week out from 2021 to 22, was it, Jason, my perma captain, to there, not even getting in me predicted 11. And of course, Rasmus Højlund against another absolute waste of space against over Anthony Martial.
Waste of space, absolutely love it.
He is a waste of space, by the way.
Yes, he's not done anything, and it's quite interesting. I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I don't like to engage in Schadenfreude, but it is good to see Manchester United fall flat on their face. Just on, is it Maino, the young midfielder that you said might not play? During these occasions, though, when Manchester United are in crisis, they always turn to like some fluky teenager prodigy that's going to be the next Ronaldo, Messi, Maradona, Pelé. We had it in yesteryear, Anthony Martial, then Garnacho, Rashford, who else? There was Adnan Januzaj, who was going to be bigger than Jesus. So is Maino going to be the next one that, scores one goal, is 100 million transfer, touted for that, going to be the best thing ever, and then obviously fades into obscurity like most of the Manchester United players?
You know what? I mean, what I've seen of him, he looks tidy. I know he's held in very high regard. He's 18 years of age. You know what? There's no need to put him up there on that pedestal. Let him learn his trade. Let him cut his craft, and learn that, and let him just get on with the job. The difficulties that you have at that age is on consistencies around that highest level of performance. We sort of got that with Lewis Miley at Newcastle, 17-year-old coming in a team, and when you're doing well and when you're performing, everybody's backing that play. Everybody puts you out there as the next best thing, but there are going to be obvious dips in form. You need to expect that. You need to assess and evaluate that player on an even keel. Don't get too caught up in the hype, but similarly, when things have taken a bit of a downturn, when they have had a dip in form, again, you don't want to get on the backs too much. It's to be expected. Look, he's a kid who has a very promising future, looks tidy, and that's nothing more than it is at this moment in time.
There you go. I'm just having a cheeky dig at Red Devils fans and Manchester United with the furore that goes around them. But let's get on to Newcastle. Like you said, it's going to be a big win for them against Everton. And I think a lot of people will be excited to see that Isaac is back leading the line. They seem to play better with a central striker. But also Gordon is playing, even though he's been flagged. We've had criticisms of those flagging systems before, but you've got him starting. So yeah, talk us through the team, and predictions for that game week fixture against the Toffees.
Yeah, the game on Thursday is a big help for us. That gives us lots of time to recover. So that's why I've went an unchanged Magpies team. Anthony Gordon did pick up a knock. It was almost like an off-the-cuff remark. I'm limping. Nothing too serious. He was training with the group this morning. I did see him down there with the group. Also, just a note, in case the rumour mill is going, Kieran Trippier wasn't initially with the squad, but that again is more just around that individual management of the player. There's certainly nothing with regards to any issues that will likely to keep him out of that. The big change that we see would be in goal, of course. Nick Pope dislocated his shoulders. Typically, it's the same left-hand shoulder that he dislocated when he was back in Burnley. We're probably looking in the region of around about 5 months, or certainly 4 to 5 months. That's the average return to play on the Premier League for goalkeepers over the last maybe 12 to 13 seasons. So that's a big blow for us. Martin Dubravka comes in. He's an able deputy. Whether Newcastle look elsewhere, maybe in that free agent market between now, or maybe look to pick somebody up in January, remains to be seen.
Yes. So with the Dubravka situation, then again on the Athletic, a lot of people ask you questions there, but bring that discussion over here. It's not going to affect Newcastle too much because also like you said, he's a good backup. But also, the Newcastle defence don't allow many chances anyway, so you expect clean sheets to continue there.
Look, I mean, Martin Dubravka a few seasons back was Newcastle #1. He was good enough to get himself on the books at Manchester United. So, look, I do like Martin Dubravka. I don't know if people have forgotten, how good he is, or maybe it's just because, Nick Pope has been fantastic in recent times for us, and I think you don't have to look any further than his performance in Paris against PSG to see how good Nick Pope was. But look, I think we'll get through, and we'll certainly get results, and we'll certainly keep clean sheets with Martin Dubravka. Make no bones about that. And Sven Botman, he isn't too far away. Fingers crossed. Certainly not for this game, and maybe not at the weekend, but the non too distant future. Hopefully before the end of the year, and again that will just solidify that Newcastle backline.
So let's continue over to Nottingham Forest. What is the latest for them?
Yeah, Chris Wood picked up a little bit of a knock, or hyperextended his knee, and certainly managed to see out the game, but that was a little bit painful post-match. He was coming in, of course, covering the injured Tayo Awumni. Other options for Steve Cooper may be former Liverpool attacker Divock Origi, but he just doesn't look as if he's fully fit coming off the back of a hip injury himself. So a couple of changes maybe to freshen up that team. Hudson-Odoi is one that I've thrown back in there. Dominguez. We've seen the likes of Ryan Yates back into that Forest lineup at the weekend, but it's probably arguably one of the worst performances of the season. That home defeat to Everton, which is why I have the likes of Elena back in there ahead of Serge Aura, and also Nia Kite. He replaces, or may replace, the injured Willy Bolly. Steve Cooper said that he had picked up that muscle problem. It looked to be that high proximal end of the hamstring, or possibly around the glute. Didn't rule him out, but like I say, just given the turnaround and the fact that it was a muscle injury, that's why I've went with Nia Kite in alongside Murillo, who himself is also carrying a little bit of a muscle issue. But I've went just for the one to Bowley to miss out. Hopefully Murillo will be past fit.
And I think, that actually brings up another good point here. We won't keep people too long because obviously we need to move off as well. But quite often, people really panic when they see a player get a knock or kind of have to walk off a little bit early. But this is kind of a fact of working with injuries, is most players are carrying some sort of injury, some sort of knock. They often play through things all the time. It's not a massive problem, is it, Ben?
Yeah, look, it's part and parcel of the game. Football is a contact sport, and especially when you're coming into, we're past a third of the way of the season now, games in quick succession. Yeah, it's about managing, it's the difference between those minor knocks, niggles and ailments, and those things which are potentially maybe long-term or likely to keep you on the sidelines for a sustained period. So, like I say, rarely are players going out on that pitch feeling 100%. It's about managing that 70-80% time and hopefully trying to sort of get an optimal performance out of that.
Continuing over to Sheffield United, let's talk about them. Is it tough to make a decision because obviously with new management you don't know who's going to play, or do you think that the injury situation and also maybe just how precarious they are does force them into what you've done here today?
Yeah, very, very difficult. Chris Wilder coming in. I tried to do a little bit of research on how he typically likes to set up. But because of that, again, tight turnaround, I haven't maybe had the opportunity to look at that in any sort of great detail. What I would say, George Baldock went off with a hamstring-related problem at the weekend. That means he's probably going to miss out. So that's Jaden Bogle, who would be a leg-for-leg swap. Ollie McBurney, massive influence on that Blade side. He had his second dismissal of the season. That means he's going to serve a 2-match ban this time around. So it depends on how Chris Wilder wants to set up, whether we go with that 3-5-2, 4-2-3-1. I think Cameron Archer will lead the line. Vinicius Souza has been managing a little bit of an injury, and I think that's why that probably came into play at the weekend with Paul Heckingbottom and why he didn't get any minutes, but he could come back into the team.
Yes, so it'll be interesting to see the Wilder situation. Tottenham team hasn't loaded, so we'll see if let me give the page a refresh.
But I have got the team here, so I don't know if I'm looking at a different one to you. And again, not too many changes within this Tottenham lineup. One of the big news is the return of Christian Romero. He's back after a 3-match ban. We've seen Tottenham line up without a recognised centre back in recent times with Emerson Royal, the player who's been deputised. And I did actually on Friday's predicted lineup include Eric Dyer in the starting 11. That was to combat the aerial threat of Erling Haaland and City generally, but he picked up a late training ground injury on Saturday, so that's why he was omitted from the squad. Elsewhere, I think Lo Celso, he's come back from his injuries, performed quite well, grabbed themselves a couple of goals. I'm going to play Basuma in a slightly advanced role. I think he gets a nod in that role with Oliver Skip sitting in there. The other alternative would be to drop Basuma a little bit deeper, play Kulusevski centrally, Johnson on the right, and then maybe bring Brian Gill in on the left.
There you go. So continuing over from Tottenham over to West Ham, and somebody whose name we have not seen for a long time, it's Danny Ings.
Yeah, look, I'm making a call, obviously, well ahead in advance. And that's just, again, comes down to the Jared Bowen ongoing knee problem. He was obviously in the starting lineup this weekend. It didn't look great, lacked a little bit of sharpness. There may be a need to manage this problem, particularly if it's a loading issue. If you don't know, there's been a lot of swelling and inflammation around that knee. So it's one that he could effectively train normally, play it, and then something can flare up. That's why I have Danny Ings in that starting lineup. But of course, we're making a call well in advance, a couple of days. I just think, could maybe Jared Bowen play 2 games in quick succession, i.e. Thursday and next Sunday? Maybe not. That is why I'm going with Ings on the Thursday and probably Jared Bowen on the Sunday.
Marius seems to have a special relationship with Danny Ings because he's called him Daddy Ings. So I have to... No kink shaming here, though, Marius. You do you. And Danny Ings, I wouldn't like to comment, but maybe he would be interested in yourself as well, Marius. Maybe this could be the start of a beautiful relationship. But genuinely, I'm excited to see what he can do with West Ham because I don't know why he's not been playing. It just seems
he's not been scoring either, though, Jason.
Yes, it's an odd one.
Time. Yeah, maybe Thursday.
Yeah, I mean you can't score if you don't play, but then also he's not playing because he's not scoring. It's a catch-22, isn't it? So finally, let's move to Wolves. Finish off the game week again for your athletic discussions. A lot of people are loving Cunha and Hwang Hee-chan. Don't understand it myself. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I like Gary O'Neill and I like Wolves. In terms of FPL assets, they're not 2 players that I would necessarily gravitate towards. Heat-Chan would probably be the one of the two that I would opt for, but I just think there are better options elsewhere. We should see more of a performance that we're used to seeing from Wolves. Although, after that first half battering at the weekend, they stayed in the game, and maybe they consider themselves a little bit unfortunate in the end to come away with nothing. But we have Mario Lemina and João Gomez back in the mix. Those players were serving a one-match ban. At the head of the show, somebody asked about he rolled his ankle. Certainly nothing too serious. Next weekend is realistic for him. So that's why we've got Hugo Bueno and the goalkeeper, Jose Sa. That was a lower back issue that forced him off. He looks to be fine. He did train as normal on Monday. So providing there's been no kind of adverse reaction overnight, then I certainly expect him to remain between the sticks.
The broadcast just cut out there for a second there. That was Dinnery that you're talking about that's rolled his ankle, and Hugo Bueno has replaced him. But for the team, okay, we got one last question here and then we shall move off. Any Pedro Neto update, Ben?
Yeah, back on the grass, not fully integrated with the squad as yet. Gary O'Neill said, look, he's playing with a smile on his face, looking really happy. Again, champing at the bit. He's a player that I wouldn't think is too far away. Certainly before Christmas to be in and around that match day squad. And maybe after Christmas before we're looking at, pushing for a start. So, like I say, maybe around game week 17-ish. I think that's realistic for Neto.
Well, there you go, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and keep up to date, because obviously it's thick and fast through this festive period, and we're going to keep you up to date as much as possible. But it's been great chatting to you on a Tuesday rather than a Friday, but we will be back again as usual for the weekend, so make sure to stay up to date with that. However, we're going to wish you the best of luck. Stay healthy. Have fun with your festive period. Maybe